50 Movies in 50 Weeks, where I, your host, Joey Hollywood, tries to get through all 50 movies in this 50 movie box set from Mill Creek in 50 weeks. The movie I watched today was called The Alpha Incident from the year 1977. If you've been watching these past few years, you might recognize this title because The Alpha Incident was actually on, I believe, the Sci-Fi Classics box set. But when we put the disc in, the movie that was in there instead was called Zontar: The Thing from Venus, a 1967 movie, which was, I believe, if I'm remembering correctly, was a pretty fun little flick. It was kind of like that episode of Star Trek, the Operation Annihilate, which, now that I've said that out loud, I'm not sure if anyone would know what episode that is. I used to have like an encyclopedic memory of Star Trek plots and titles, like the original series, Next Generation, Deep Space Nine, and weirdly Enterprise, which I wasn't a big fan of. Voyager is where my memory is the least reliable. Well, actually, it's been several years since I watched Star Trek. The second season of Star Trek Picard kind of ruined Star Trek for me, so I haven't really picked it up since. I heard season 3 is good. Maybe one day I'll check it out. But season 2 made me not only ruin the TV show Star Trek Picard, but it made me take a long break from Star Trek for a while. I used to watch Star Trek yearly. I would start with the original series, and I'd watch everything, all 800 something hours of it, get to Enterprise, and then start the whole thing over again. It was kind of like, I don't know what to watch, I'll throw on Star Trek. I know where I left off. Picard ruined that for me. I've been doing that for I think at that point 27 years or something like that. Well, I mean, not since I was a baby. So probably since 2003 I've been doing something along those lines. I actually, at one point in time, I had the entire series of Star Trek: The Next Generation on VHS, and I watched them. And then I upgraded to DVD and eventually Blu-ray. But that's not why you're here. Well, maybe that is why you're here. I don't know. I get off topic so much. I think you might just be here for my ramblings, not for my actual movie reviews. And, well, I hope that's why you're here. But without further ado, let's get into The Alpha Incident. I was so excited to watch this because I was really disappointed when it wasn't on the last box set we watched. I was like, what's this? But Zontar was fun. I really like Zontar. It was one of the highlights of that box set, if I remember correctly. I was excited to see this one. What's this one about? This is like the mystery movie, you know? And I watch it, and gotta say I wasn't a big fan of it. The opening of the movie is very straight to the point. Very bad picture, by the way. And it's like just cells underneath a microscope. And I think what this is supposed to be is, it kind of reminded me of the Andromeda Strain meets The Outer Limits. That's the kind of vibe I got. Not the new Andromeda Strain, the one from the 70s. I think it was from the 70s. It might have been from the 80s. I've only seen the Andromeda Strain once. But the older Andromeda Strain movie kind of reminded me of a meshing of those two styles, like the kind of the story of the Andromeda Strain and the mood of the original Outer Limits. The kind of like the dark, eerie, negative side where I feel like the Twilight Zone always mostly had a more positive spin. The Outer Limits had more of a negative spin. That's how I would describe this movie. There is some sort of like infectious disease that they're studying in this lab, and they're trying to move samples. And instead of moving samples for something that's like dangerous the way you think you ought to, they put it on like a regular old train. And I don't know this actor's name, but he plays a homeless person in every John Carpenter movie. Like, there's a select few of you out there that will know this guy's face the moment I say that, because that's what he plays. He plays homeless people in John Carpenter movies. And when he's not in a John Carpenter movie playing a homeless person, he's playing a homeless person in someone else's movie. Like, that's just who I think of when I think of a homeless person. I'm like, oh, it's that guy. The turncoat in They Live. He's that guy. The one who starts off homeless, and at the end of the movie you see him in the tuxedo and he's like, we just want some money. That guy. Sorry, I have to pull out my notes again. Every time you hear that sound, it's me pulling out my notes. Get used to it. I like it, especially since I got a new flip phone. I can do that now. Anyways, the John Carpenter homeless guy breaks open the boxes, infects the train, everyone involved in the train, and the way this disease works is if you fall asleep, you die. You don't just die, you like explode, and it's like gory and gross. Well, 1970s gory and gross. There is like paranoia. You'd think it's going to be like the opening of The Stand, where the infection starts breaking out. That's where it seems like it's going, like, oh, this person's going to get it and it's going to start a pandemic. But it doesn't go there. It instead goes to an isolated room where our main characters are really trying not to fall asleep. And there's elements of it that remind me of this one Roger Corman movie where there's a nuclear holocaust all around this one oasis where a father and daughter are, and like a man is introduced to the situation that disrupts everything. It kind of reminds me of that in a lot of like the dialogue and the conflict in it, which I don't think is intentional. I think that's just maybe just a lazy, like, these kind of characters, let's put them in here. We got to get this video out for the Sunday night movie. You know, I wanted to like it, but it just kind of drags. None of the characters are super interesting, and you can see the ending from a mile away. And if you care about the ending of this movie, I recommend stop watching now, because I'm going to talk about it, because it's probably the only thing really worth talking about in the movie. Over the course of the movie, our main characters are trapped in this room in quarantine. They slowly start dying. Either they murder each other or they fall asleep and explode. And finally, we get down to one guy, right? One guy. And he falls asleep, and you think he's going to explode, because that's what this disease does. When you fall asleep, you melt or whatever, you explode, you just turn into gore. And then he wakes up, and he's like, oh my gosh, I'm immune. We can cure this disease with my DNA. And then he gets killed. Kind of like Night of the Living Dead. Ending you could see from a mile away. And I feel like it could work if this was like a 30-minute episode of The Outer Limits, or Outer Limits was actually hour-long episodes, but you know what I mean. If it was truncated to a very short amount of time, I feel like a lot of my issues with this movie would have been resolved. At the end of the day, I'm kind of glad that we watched Zontar, the Thing from Venus, all those years ago, because it's a movie I'm going to actually remember. I'm not going to remember this movie. When I do the year in review, I'm probably not going to remember this one. But that's it for now. Sorry, there wasn't much to talk about. I think I just ranted about Star Trek forever. But that's why you come here, I hope. Anyways, that's it for now. Thank you for watching. I'll see you next week. Remember, please be kind and rewind.